Hello and welcome to another Capture the Flag episode of Daryl Show Your Work, episode 93 to be exact. All right, so in this episode, I will be conducting a privilege escalation exploit against some SUID binaries, and to give a brief overview of what that is, SUID binary, what SUID is a special type of Linux file permission that allows a file to be executed with the permissions of the file owner rather than the permissions of the user who runs the file. So when you think about the permissions, think in terms of when we look at a file, when we pull up a file on the command line and we see those three sets of RWX, all right? R being for read, W being for write, X being for execute. And the order of those three are owner, group, and everybody else. Well, with the SUID, it's going to have an S in there, and one of those three sets of permissions, and that's what the S means, is that it's going to just look at what the owner permissions are, and it's going to act accordingly to it's going to give us permissions accordingly to that, and not necessarily what our current permissions or privilege set is. All right, so before I jump into that, I want to give my usual disclaimer here that I usually give anytime I'm doing any sort of offensive security or red teaming activity, that this is for ethical and research and educational purposes only. Any sort of malicious activity that may directly or indirectly come from someone watching my video, I do not take any responsibility for, nor do I condone. All right, so with that said, let's get started. So let's first find out where I'm located on the network by finding my IP address. So let's do an ifconfig. All right. So I am on Ethernet, the Ethernet 1 interface, and it looks like my IP address is 192 206.213.2. All right. So next, I'm gonna do a ping sweep here, and let's find out who else is up and awake on my local network here, and I could possibly target um, for my little experiment here. All right, so I'm giving it my CIDR address. And again, what that's going to do is going to ping every available, every known host on my network, and it's going to return response from whoever is up and running. All right, so we have 1, 2, and 3. 1 more than likely being the gateway, so I'm not going to mess with that. 2 being myself, so 3 is our lucky victim here. All right, so let's do some recon here with Nmap, and I'm going to do a service scan, and we're going to aim that at our neighbor at .3. Give me a moment here. All right. Sorry about that. Just had a feeling it may get a bit noisy here in the Brooks household in a few minutes, so didn't want that coming through on the video. All right. So let me just scroll up a little bit here. Uh, Here we go. Okay, so we can see that port 8000 is open and is running the HTTP protocol. So that's an alternative port to run the HTTP protocol on. So let's make a visit there. All right, so I'm gonna open my browser. All right, we're gonna say HTTP :/ 192.206.213:8000. All right. All right, and again, now we've walked through the front door of our host once again. All right, so I kind of avoided the whole let's try to brute force to try to find our way in. Let's look for some keys in the form of credentials. I just walked right into the front door this time because the most important thing is not necessarily um, getting into the system in this video. It's about what can we do once we are in to gain some sensitive information. Okay, so now that we're into the target host, I could do some initial enumeration here. So if I want to see what group my account is in, let me see. Oh, I gotta put an S on that groups. There we go. So we can see student as part of the student group. And if we want to see my current working directory, I do PWD. All right. So we see that we're in the student home directory. All right. So let's see what's actually in our local directory here. So I'm gonna do a list dash AL. This is gonna show me everything, including any hidden files. All right, so we see two files here at the bottom, greeting and welcome. So and then we also see one has where the owner has read and execute permissions, and nothing else is set as far as the group and the everybody else. But then we can see with welcome that indeed has the owner has read, write, and S. All right, and so then we see the other two sets as far as the group and as far as everybody else has that read and execute permission. All right, so basically this should give me all the permissions that the owner is allowed to run as and not necessarily just the R and the X, which would apply to me since I'm not the owner of this file. All right, so let's first see what happens when we try to execute the greetings file. All right, so I'm gonna say dot backslash greetings. All right, so we see a permission was denied. All right, because of course no permissions are set for me. All right, on these last three little areas right here, nothing is set for everybody else outside of the owner. All right, so I was denied. Now let's see if I try to run the welcome. Let's see what happens. So it's dot backslash or period backslash welcome. All right, and it looks like that ran. All right, so basically it comes back with the sentence saying "Welcome to Attack Defense Labs." All right, so let's dive a bit into a welcome and let's see what's actually in that welcome script. And instead of just doing a regular cat command, I want to specifically see what strings are in there. So I'm gonna say strings welcome. All right, so what this is going to do is going to search for strings within that within this welcome binary file. All right, so it's something that I see immediately here at the top. And you know what? I realized I never increased my font. Hold on, let me hope I didn't lose anybody here. Okay, so I'm gonna have to go up a little bit more since the font is a bit bigger. Okay, so if we look at this particular line right here, so this is basically telling us that that this welcome script actually calls the greetings binary script when it's executed. So hypothetically, given what those permissions were, how restrictive those permissions were with the greeting script, what if we were just to get rid of this one and just create our own? And you know that because this is still hard coded within the welcome. So if I could just, what if I just hypothetically just delete the current welcome file, create my own, and see what happens? You know, if when welcome is ran and then it still calls my version of greetings. Let's see if that could work out for us. All right. So first thing I'm going to do. All right. So we saw that greetings was in our local directory. All right. So I'm going to actually remove the current greetings. Let's see if I had the permission to do that. I'm going to remove the current greetings binary file from here. All right, it's asked me if I want to do that. I'm going to say yes. All right, so let's check our local directory again, and that's gone. All right, so I'm going to recreate it, but this time I'm going to add a bin bash to it, which is going to create a bash session for me, and hopefully it'll throw me into root. So I'm going to say cp as far as copying the contents of bin bash, the bin bash file, and I want to copy that into a file called greetings. All right. So again, what this is doing is creating the greetings file, but it's copying the contents of bin bash into greetings. All right, and let's check my local directory again here, and we can see his greetings is there now. All right, so let's see what happens when I run that welcome script again. Look at there. I got a root session. All right. So now that I have a root session, remember, this is a show your work edition of I was gonna show your work. This is a capture the flag edition of show your work. Let me try running one more command here. Okay, so I ran the ID command. All right, so we can see that right now the owner of the this is root. All right, now I'm root, and then we have student, and we see the level of permissions here. So I just wanted to verify that I'm indeed have root privileges here, as we can see right there. All right, so let's see, let's change to the um let's change to the root directory here of the root account. All right, so I'm gonna do a list command, and let's see. Now let's jump into this actual folder called root. All right, let's see what's in there. I'm doing a list command. All right, there's our flag. So I'm gonna say cat flag, and voila, there's our flag. All right. So again, and like I always say, flag is just always an example of highly sensitive information that we gain access to, and we could do whatever our heart's content it is to do with it. We can modify it, delete it, exfiltrate it, whatever. As a intruder or an attacker, think about the worst case scenario somebody could do with sensitive information, and that's what we're going. That's what typically we do with this flag. Okay. So to give a brief overview of what I accomplished here, first, of course, we found our target host, all right, within our local network. Once we did that, we found out it was running on port 8000, which is an alternative port to HTTP. And then so I made a visit to that IP address, running on that port, and it threw me directly into the target host computer. Really didn't have to do any type of brute force or anything like that. Walked through the front door, did a little bit of enumeration, looked around in our home directory, in our student home directory. We were a basic user. Found those welcome and greeting files. Saw that with the greetings file, it was very restrictive because only permissions were set for the owner and not for the group and not for anybody else. But on the welcome file, it had the owner had the SUID permission set on the owner, and then just read and execute permissions on the group and for everybody else, which is how I was still able to successfully execute that welcome binary file without having full read, write, and execute permissions. So did a bit more digging there. Wanted to see what strings were contained inside of the welcome file, and I actually found a reference to the greeting binary file, which tells me that welcome calls that greetings file when it runs, and the fact that I'm able to access welcome and I'm able to execute and look inside of it, I took advantage of that by then deleting the current greetings file. But remember that reference is still inside of the welcome file. So I deleted the current version of the greetings file in my local directory, created my own, but this time copying the context of bin bash. So then when welcome was ran again by me, it ran my versions of the greetings file, but this time throwing me into a root session since I copied the contents of that bin bash file is what enables us to use bash sessions on Linux. And again, I had that root session, did a bit more digging, and we found our flag. All right. So the big takeaway of this is just be careful about how you assign permissions, to not be overly generous with it. Be careful how you use SUID, and also how you're calling your files within your within certain scripts, because things such as this can be exploited. And I showed how we can using the SUID and taking advantage of how this file was formatted internally, how I was able to then take that and gain an elevated session here.